When I say squishy, I mean he was on the fence saying, well, it's not on his agenda and he really doesn't want to see it. But he never said he wouldn't sign it if it came across his desk. In fact, he even said on camera that if it did come across his desk, he would sign it. So we beat up on him. I beat up on him personally on the radio. I don't mean personally. I mean, I beat up on him publicly in the radio and in newspaper articles. So we also have freshman legislators, and let me tell you, freshman legislators are such a huge resource because they have not been here, like in your case in Columbus, for a long time, and they don't know what they don't know. In other words, we had a Senator Pat Colbeck and a Representative Mike Shirkey, both freshman legislators, who didn't know that they couldn't pass a right-to-work law. You know, people who had been around would say, oh, we'll never pass that. We'll never pass that. These guys were fresh out, and they said, what can we do to build job growth in Michigan more than anything? Let's pass a right-to-work law. And they went out, and they were very successful in their respective sides of the House to actually get that done. So freshman legislators are a great, great resource because they're ideological and they're willing to take it on. And as I said, the Michigan Freedom to Work Coalition really grew in Michigan, and we made a lot of noise. And part of what we did is we controlled the message, something that Ohioans for Workplace Freedom is doing a great job at. They're doing a phenomenal job at that, is controlling the message. It's so important. It got to the point where even union officials were using the term freedom to work. That's huge. That's huge in the newspapers and in the media when a union official will talk about freedom to work. And in Michigan, part of what I did is make sure there was an outcry by union members for right to work. And that's something that is very, very crucial here in Ohio, is to get union members willing to come out and speak out and say, you know what, I'm a union member and I want to have the ability to choose. I want the right to refrain from any such activity. Why should my money be used for a political agenda that I disagree with? And on it goes. Union members willing to speak out on this issue is your best resource. And then, of course, we had other labor restrictions passed by the legislature that started getting union officials really nervous. They started hearing all that we were doing. They started hearing that it was being talked about in Lansing in the legislature. The legislature passed other labor restrictions like paycheck protection, dues checkoff bills, stuff like that, union officials started getting very scary about. So what were the biggest reasons why it was passed? Well, number one, Indiana went right to work, and you have the same issue here. But even more so because not only Indiana, but you also have Michigan as two states now on your border that passed right to work. In Michigan, they had a huge overreach. It was called Proposal 2. Do you guys remember that in Michigan? Yeah. Proposal 2 bordered on what I would say is evil. Evil to the point where what Proposal 2 would do, literally, is give unions the right to veto legislation. Any legislation passed in the Michigan legislature and signed by the governor. If the unions didn't like it, they could veto it. We got unions so scared that they overreached with Proposal 2. They sold it, they spent a lot of money on it. Ultimately, in a state that went for Obama by 8 points, Proposal 2 went down by 15 points in November. And then the very next month is when right to work was on the table and we passed it in the lame duck session. In Michigan, we had both air and ground cover. Again, something very important. Ground cover is all the grassroots. We had grassroots knocking on doors. We had grassroots educating, talking. People like you that would be willing to go out and talk to your neighbors and say, you know what? I believe everybody has a right to be in a union, but only if they choose to do so. That way, you're not setting yourself up as anti-union, but you're setting yourself up as a worker having the ability to choose for themselves. So we had the ground cover, but we had the air cover. What I mean by that is we had some individuals with the deep pocketbooks who were willing to pay for the radio ads and the the stuff like that that has to go together, the ground cover and the air cover. So that was extremely important as well. So, in fact, when they announced Proposal 2, my group, Union Conservatives, held a press conference on the steps of the Capitol building in Lansing. We had conservative groups throughout Michigan. The Mackinac Center, we had even outside of Michigan, Competitive Enterprise Institute, which Mr. Vernuccio, who John talked about, Vinny from, who's now with the Mackinac Center, he worked for Competitive Enterprise Institute in Washington, D.C. He came out for this press conference. We blasted apart Proposal 2 and said this was a disastrous overreach by union officials. And the media got it, people got it, they started understanding early on what union officials were trying to do. And this is something you guys could do, is organize and set up press conferences and stuff like that. You don't set up a press conference just to set up a press conference. You have to be announcing something, or you have to be doing something for a press conference for them to be really interested. So, what's going on here in Ohio? What's some of the propaganda? You know, one of the things that I do is I keep an eye on Google alerts. Do you guys know what Google alerts are? Very, very important if you want to keep your ear to the ground to know what's happening. You can set up through Google what's called Google alerts, so that anytime in the news something happens, they'll send you an alert. In other words, I have Google alerts on my name because the unions love to bash me. I have Google alerts on union conservatives, union liberty, but I also have Google alerts on freedom to work, right to work, UAW, AFL-CIO, SEIU, Teamsters, on and on and on and on it goes. That way I get shown by Google what's going on with all these individuals nationally. A couple months ago, I started getting Google alerts about what's going on here in Ohio, and I went ballistic. Because, have you guys heard of these?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
I read that and my head almost exploded. I mean, really, Workplace Freedom Act with the sickle and the hammer, the communism symbol, and then the Workplace Freedom Act poisons workers. In fact, as I was driving home from Columbus, I saw the one on the left, and I went, really? Here's why my head wanted to explode. What's the truth about unions? Well, a lot of people say that unions are, by their very nature, Marxist. In fact, if you go to a lot of the, I shouldn't say a lot, but if you go to the Socialist Party websites and stuff like that, you will find out that socialists say that unions are socialist and Marxist. Conservatives say it. It seems like everybody's saying it except unions. They won't admit to it. So what's the truth on this issue? Well, interestingly enough, there was a rally in Washington, D.C., October 2nd, 2010. It was called the One Nation Working Together Rally. What they did is all the unions came together, and they basically said that we're going to stop the obstructionists, which they were calling the conservatives at the time. And so they wanted to rally. It was really after the Glenn Beck 828 rally. They didn't get nearly the numbers that Glenn Beck got, but they tried their hearts out. Well, who did the unions rally with? The Communist Party USA, the Socialist Party USA, and the Democratic Socialists of America. They all rallied shoulder to shoulder together in Washington, D.C. And they're calling Workplace Freedom Act communist? Really? And see, there's YouTube videos out there that show the Communist Party and the unions rallying together on October 2nd, 2010. You can find that if you do a search on it. So what I read about is that unions were saying that what Workplace Freedom does is lower wages and work rights so that we become like China. And so because of that, they say it's communist. Well, if anybody says that to you, if any union members say that to you, now you know the truth. That unions rally with the Communist Party USA, the Socialist Party USA, and the Democratic Socialists of America. And you know what's really frightening is when this happened, I went all over and started reporting it. None of the, you know, our union sponsored a bus, our local union sponsored a bus to go out to this rally. Nobody knew that Communist Party, the Socialist Party, the Democratic Socialists were going to be there, or that they were actually sponsors of the event. Until I came back and started telling everybody. I'm 40, I'll be 48 soon. People my age and older were just livid, absolutely livid, that how dare the unions rally with the Communist Party. People about 35 and older to my age, you know, they would get mad, but, you know, it was okay. People under 35,
They didn't give a crap.
they didn't give a crap. They said, I don't care as long as I get my paycheck. Ladies and gentlemen, what we fight is apathy. Apathy and uneducated people who don't understand what's really at stake here. So the truth of this propaganda, again, if someone says something to you, you now know the truth and you now know where to be able to find that truth. So what can you do for Ohio? Well, you can educate both union members and the public now. How do you educate union members? Again, becoming, I can tell you that most union members don't know much about right-to-work legislation. All they know is what their union officials tell them is that it's bad. And that, as John said, the two biggest things, the right to work for
Less.
and the free loader, free rider argument, which we can, every time that's pitched to me, I can knock it out of the ballpark every time. So educate union members and the public now. Make sure they understand this is not anti-union, it's pro-union because it makes union officials answerable and accountable to the membership. It makes them stronger because of competition, something John was talking about. It's very, very pro-union worker. Expose the union propaganda that we mentioned, make a lot of noise about this issue. Get unions nervous and kind of scared of what's going on. That's not necessarily a bad thing. And that conservative groups, Tea Party groups, grassroots organizations all need to work together. We did that in Michigan for the first time. I can tell you that a lot of conservative groups never work together because, you know, let's be honest, they're fighting for the same donations, they're fighting for the same dollars. But on this issue, they all work together. And it was a beautiful thing to see. I don't mean to be sappy, but it was really a beautiful thing to see. And then again, I said messaging, 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 just like in real estate, location, location, location. Freedom to work is pro-union worker. It's not anti-union. It makes unions stronger and more responsive to the worker. I can tell you, I said I have union members in 35 states around the country. I get emails from union members who now live in right-to-work states, who lived in Michigan before, that say that their unions are so much more responsive to their needs because they know that that worker has a choice to leave if they're not serviced properly. You don't have that now. In Ohio, union officials can put their feet up on the desk and laugh all the way to the bank or maybe the golf course or the bar or
All the above, trust
or
me.
New Orleans or Las Vegas or Orlando or wherever the next conference is taking place. And it liberates workers from forced political contributions. For me, this is the #1 issue why I got involved, is because my money was being used for a political agenda that I disagreed with. So, important to remember, there is no better spokesman for this issue than a union member, period. So if you have neighbors, friends, family members, get them involved. Let them know there's a group like Union Conservatives that is full of people willing to speak out and stand with them and be strong. They may go through persecution, they may go through ridicule and harassment, but for me, I wear it as a badge of honor. I also have all my windows and doors alarmed, and you know, trust me, I get scary threats all the time. But why is that true? Well, you see that picture? It basically shows like a guy eating a dog. Have you ever heard the term man bites dog? When a dog bites a man, it's not really a news story. But when a man bites a dog, that then becomes a news story. Well, when a union member comes up and speaks out, the media listen on this issue. So union members in Ohio are going to be the best spokesman for this issue, period, bar none. We can have a business owner come out, but the union will attack him as saying, oh, you just want to pay less wages. But when a union member comes out and speaks up on this issue, it's the best thing, period. So, lastly, an important quote. to compel a man to furnish contributions of money for the propagation of opinions which he disbelieves is both sinful and tyrannical. And that is how I ended my
Amen.
5-minute opening testimony in front of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. And in fact, Darrell Issa said, "Mr. Bowman, you just stole my opening statement." I said, "I apologize, Mr. Chairman." But that is so important because as people like me love to quote the Founding Fathers, Thomas Jefferson has some great ones, and this one is absolutely true. Unions will say, well, there's protections called Beck laws, but if you look at my testimony, it's all online, if you do Google searches. I basically make the case that even Beck laws don't go far enough, because even people who become objectioners and pay only what's called the agency fee, a lot of that money is still going towards a political agenda. So, again, contacts John, a great resource, and the work that they're doing in Ohio is phenomenal. I would say they are doing twice the work that we did in Michigan with Michigan Freedom to Work. I mean, they've got a video. Did you show the video?
No.
Oh my gosh, I saw that and I started salivating. They did such a fantastic job on the video. Mackinac Center for Public Policy, and of course, Union Conservatives. And before we go to question and answer, John, can you give me a hand real quick? This is something I did in Columbus because I think that I would love to come back here and do this again. We passed right to work in Michigan December 11th, 2012. It did not go into effect until March 28th, 2013, just because of Michigan's laws. Michigan's law says that a new law does not go into effect until 90 days after the end of the session. So it did not go into effect until March 28th, 2013.
I'm over here to stand in the middle, kind of like that. No, keep talking.
And so on the first day that Michigan was officially a right-to-work state, Union Conservatives held a gala. We had huge sponsors. We had a great turnout. This was a banner I had behind the stage that said, "Workplace Freedom." Believe it or not, the same name you're using here in Ohio. I said our Workplace Freedom celebration. I would love to come back to you and have a cutout of Ohio and slap it right over Michigan with the date of yours and say, let's celebrate Ohio being the 25th right-to-work
How
state in
about the
Michigan.
weekend of the Michigan-Ohio State game after the 14 election? We would love to have that on there.
I would love to bring it, so as long as Michigan.
Down.
Okay.
So anyway, so that's what I wanted to show you, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions if you have any. Like I said, I know that this group is very well educated, and
You said you got organizations starting in Ohio. How strong is it that you have?
I have members in Ohio.
Members.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have over 2,500 members nationwide. These are people who are actually willing to be,
Right.
involved. In Ohio, I think I have 87.
That's one per county almost. There's one outlier.
Um,
Probably didn't.
But I also have a lot of people who sign up, and when I say a member, what I mean are people who sign up on the website. There's no cost, there's nothing like that. They just want to be a member of Union Conservative. There's also a lot of members who don't give me their address, so there could be some more from Ohio, but they're testing me out. They're kind of scared. So
And trolls, you probably got a few of them.
yeah,
on there,
most
too.
of my people honestly are from Michigan, but it's growing nicely, and every time I'm on the TV, I get more and more emails saying, "Wow, I've never heard of your organization before." So, yeah. So Ohio still needs work. I have emailed those people in Ohio asking them to stand up and be firm in your commitment to right to work, and some of them have said that they're ready, willing, and able. Some of them say, "Sorry, I can't do it." That's what you're for, basically. As a leader of the organization, that's what I want to see you come to Ohio and speak out for all of us. And a lot of them may have young kids at home and stuff, and they're scared. I mean, I can tell you personally, it can get kind of scary. I mean,
No,
you know,
it
when,
gets ugly in a heartbeat.
it can get ugly in a heartbeat. I mean, when I walk down the main aisle, I get people who, you know, Poppy the Bird and, you know, and people who have